Good morning and welcome back to Create, Share, Inspire podcast. This is episode 649 and I am Kristin Omdahl. We are live in Southwest Florida in my beautiful tropical backyard. It is super breezy here today, which is so pretty. I love watching the breeze ripple through all of the leaves on my plants. If you are joining me live, please say hello. If you have questions for me, please share. If you want to share what you are working on, I know not only me, but everybody else here in our lovely community would love to hear what kind of crafty projects you're working on too. Hi Ramya, hi Melissa, good morning. Hi Judy and Constance. Hi Frayed Knot, good morning Grace and Jackie, Naomi, happy Tuesday, yes. Hi Kiranjit and Susie. Good morning Lisa. Lisa's working on the Giada. That's the shawl that I'm wearing this morning. Hi Susie from Vegas. I was just talking about Vegas last night. Hi Carrie. I was talking about how the Venetian Hotel and its sister property, the Palazzo, have my favorite bathtub in the whole world. If I ever went back to Vegas, which I don't know if I ever will, the number one thing that I would want to do is stay there to soak in that bathtub. It is so big and luxurious. Hi Kathy and Jeanette. Jeanette's from Toronto. Welcome. Hi Margaret. Thank you. This is the brand new Giada shawl. It was the mystery crochet along until yesterday, and now it is released as a finished pattern. You can get the pattern download with all of the detailed charts and written instructions on my website for only $1.99. It comes with 3 tutorial videos that you can find here on my YouTube channel. They're also embedded into the pattern page on my website for convenience. Hi Sharon. And it is a 1-ball shawl using Be So Fine Bling yarn, which is my one of my number one fingering weight yarns. You could also make it in any of my other number one fingering weight yarns, which would be So Fine yarn, Be So Lush yarn, or either the Be So Fine Bling silver or Be So Fine Bling gold yarns. This is Be So Fine Silver Bling in colorway Key West. Someone was asking where to find my butterfly clip. You can find that in my Amazon shop, amazon.com/shop/Kristin Omdahl. So hopefully some people have already started working on part 3. I know I've been really enjoying watching all of the photos show up in our private group on Facebook, the Create, Share, Inspire group. If you are a member, great. If you're not and you'd like to join, you're always welcome to. It's a private group where we share progress photos of everything that everyone's working on with my patterns or yarns. And if you're not on Facebook, you can always just email me or Judy with your progress photos or tag me on social media. You can find me on all social media, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, all those places, and I always go by my full name, Kristin Omdahl, so you're welcome to tag me anywhere. Good morning, Kim. Good morning, Judy. Judy, thank you for the links. I appreciate it. I can't share links and talk at the same time. That's like walking and chewing gum, or talk, what's the expression? Oh my gosh, I forget the expression now. Walking and chewing gum, but that seems easy. So anyway, hi Carmen. Hi Lily. Lily's gonna start her shawl today. Yay! It doesn't take long to make this one. In fact, there were questions yesterday. I think Joe was asking me, is it walking and chewing gum, Joe? Why is that the expression? Because that's not difficult to do. Anyway, Joe was asking during one of the live premieres yesterday, which shawl goes quicker, the knit or crochet of the 2 mystery knitting and crochet along shawls. And just to give you a frame of reference, this one is the knit one. This is the Kiara shawl. This one's over 100 rows of pattern, and the crochet one I think ended up being like 30 something rows. So you can see that this one, just by the nature of knitting versus crochet and the type of open work done, that this is just a quicker project. So if you are in a time crunch like Joe is, she's on a deadline to go on vacation, if time is of the essence, crochet is much faster than knitting. Not that knitting doesn't have lots of wonderful attributes that make knitting super awesome too, but if time is a priority to you, the crochet one's always going to be faster than the knit one, generally speaking. You're welcome, Joe. Hi, Nora Sue. Judy's sharing the link to the Giada knit shawl pattern now too. So that one's the same, similar to this one. You get the written instructions, all the detailed charts for only $1.99 as a PDF download on my website. It also has multiple tutorial videos, and it's also a one ball shawl with that you can make with any of my #1 fingering weight yarns. Hi Rita, good morning. Hi Vicki. Sorry if anybody I missed your name. Hi Marcia. Appreciate everybody being here. Thank you. Hi Janet. Janet, I think autocorrect is not liking these names. Janet says she just finished the Vista shawl. I'm not sure which one that is, but you use Sporty Gold Bling. That sounds awesome. I would love to see photos of that. Kathy, what uses more yarn, knit or crochet? Great question. So, generally speaking, now when I say generally speaking, that's assuming that you're comparing all the other variables, apples to apples, oranges to oranges, not apples to oranges, right? So when you're comparing similar type of projects, similar weight yarn, similar types of stitches, similar type of gauge, if everything else is similar between a knit and crochet project, generally speaking, the crochet project is faster and takes about 30% more yarn. And when you think about it, just the nature of the way the loops loop into the previous loops, right? Because that's what knitting and crochet is. We're not making knots, we're looping into loops. And just the nature of knitting, it is flatter. It is a flatter surface, right? And the crochet, by just in comparison, it has a little more bulk to it, right? I'm not saying this is bulky. The way that I do crochet and knitting is to keep it as least bulky as possible because I like things to be figure flattering, and that's always at the high top end of priority when I'm designing. The aesthetic that I'm always going for, with a few exceptions like blankets and kitty toys, is going with things that are not bulky. Hi Sugar. Baby Bjorn, want to say good morning? Did you want to say hi to everybody? No? Okay. He's rubbing on my legs like crazy, so I thought, maybe you want to say hi. No, he doesn't. He says, no, I just want to say hi to you, not to everybody. Oh, baby Bjorn. Where's Becker? He's not out here. Anyway, where were we? What were we talking about? Okay, so generally speaking, as long as everything else is similar, similar kind of project, similar size, similar gauge, similar weight of yarn, knitting is going to be a little bit slower than crochet, or maybe significantly slower. Crochet is faster, and crochet will, generally speaking, use about 30% more yarn. Obviously, there's so many variables when comparing things, but that's generally speaking. I hope that answers your question. Does anybody have any other questions? Does anybody want to see a sneak peek this morning? I'm going to show you some a couple of things. So I started working on swatches for, hi Jody, I started working on swatches for my Simple Zen lapgan Afghans. So when I say it's going to be a lapgan slash Afghan, it's because I'm going to make it in the lapgan size, about 36 by 48 inches, but then I'll write the instructions so that you can make any size Afghan, and I'll do the math for the yardage for whatever size and the dimensions for each size. So here I'm chain plying with Be So Baby yarn to get triple thickness. You could do this in two ways. You could take 3 balls of yarn and just hold all 3 strands together, or you can do the chain plying technique, which I'll show you in a minute when I get started on my knit swatch as well. So this one is using 3 strands of Be So Baby yarn in the new colorway Salt and Pepper, and I gotta say this reminds me of marble, and I don't know if it's because of the 3 strands held together. It'll be exciting to see what this color looks like when we do it single strand as well, but triple stranded, this looks like a sheet of marble to me. I'm super excited about this. Like, I don't even know if this one needs color work and gradients. I'm super happy with this all by itself. Can you imagine just a sheet of marble for an Afghan? That sounds pretty awesome. And then maybe we'll do a twisted fringe on the end to give it like a Moroccan, Middle Eastern vibe. I don't know. Or bohemian vibe. I'm really loving this. Anyway, so I'm doing this on a Tunisian crochet hook that's 9 mm and chain plying to do 3 strands of Be So Baby yarn together. I'm loving the gauge. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. So after a couple more rows, I want to get to about 4 inches square, and what I'll do is pull out my needle gauge and I'll set this up to 4 inches square just to make sure that we're almost there. Yeah, all 4 inches are represented here. Yeah, so I'll set this up to 4 inches, and then once this is a square, I'll set it in there and make sure that I've got my 4 inches, and then do the math to figure out how many, what the gauge is to figure out 36 or 48 inches, deciding on whether I'm gonna go this way or that way. Yes, Kristin, I'll stand up to show the shawl again. And then, what else am I gonna show you? Oh, and then I'm going to do a knit swatch as well. So I've got another ball of baby here, and I'll show you how to do the chain plying with that, with a 9 mm set of knitting needles. I'm using a small circular to do the swatch, and then when I end up doing the full-size blanket, after I know my gauge and know how many stitches to cast on, then I will switch to longer circulars. All right, so if somebody wanted to see this again, I'm happy to show it. Here we go. This is the Giada crochet lace shawl, formerly known as the Mystery Crochet Along, but now it is a finished shawl, and you can download the pattern on my website. It comes with multiple charts and written instructions, and there are 3 video tutorials to help you out as well. So pretty. I love it so much. And I'm styling it today with, my long and fitted Amazon dress, the long tank top one, like the what would you call it? It's below the knee. The stitch gauge you can find on my website. I sell them. Aren't they cool? So it's a great way for checking gauge on something. And it also reminds you to do enough for your gauging, right? You really need a 4-inch square to check your gauge for a couple of reasons. Number one, because of personal tension, which we talk about all the time. Each one of us has a unique tension, just like we have a unique fingerprint. And because our tension is unique, it is also varied, right? So when you're taking your tension over 4 inches, you're getting an average of your tension, not just based on one stitch. If I just measured from 1 inch on different parts of a project, I find differences in my own as well. And I'm a professional. You'd think that my tension would be pretty uniform, but it's not, because I'm not a machine, I'm a human being. So remember, give yourself a break. You are not meant to have machine tension. You are a human being creating with your hands. It is okay to have variances, but that's why taking an average over 4 inches is way more accurate than taking measurement over 1 inch. I used to do that years ago and think, oh, I'll just cast on 5 stitches, figure out what my inch is, and go to town. And it doesn't work that way. You really have more room for error if you don't take a larger swatch and do and take an average. No, my swatch is not blocked yet. That's why I was saying I haven't done that yet. I'm just showing you what I will be doing. I'm showing you how I'm getting started and showing you what tool I will use and why. But no, I have not finished it. It's still on the needles. It's still on here. It's not even cut off yet. So yeah, absolutely. I will wash my swatches before measuring, because it is how yarn is affected by water that will determine what your actual gauge is. And if we didn't wash things, it wouldn't matter. But the fact is that these are wearables, whether it's clothing or blankets. Blankets are wearables too. They go against your skin. They get the oils of your skin. They get food. They get drinks. I mean, there's lots of reasons why even blankets are wearables too. So anything that will eventually be laundered will eventually touch water, and it is how the yarn is affected by water that will determine what your final gauge is. what's the difference between Tunisian crochet hooks and regular crochet hooks? It's Tunisian is a type of crochet, and there are a variety of different ways you can do it. You can, if you're doing a small strip, you can actually do it on a regular crochet hook. If you are wanting to do a longer, more stitches, you would want a longer Tunisian flat hook, or you can get Tunisian cabled hooks like this, which in essence is very similar to a knitting circular needle, and all that is so that you can get more stitches on there. If I was only going to do a skinny scarf actually this long, I could use a regular crochet hook because the shaft of the hook is perfectly fine for that number of stitches. So when Tunisian crochet is a technique different from regular crochet, but Tunisian hooks you don't need a Tunisian hook. You can do Tunisian crochet on a regular hook. If you want to do something wider with lots of stitches, you need a hook that is wide enough to accommodate your stitches. So whether you go with the Tunisian hook, meaning the wide, long, fixed, like a straight knitting needle size, fine. But if you're doing something like a blanket, that's not even wide enough. You'll need something that has a cord on it like this to accommodate the extra stitches. So it's kind of a confusing way to answer your question. What's the difference between Tunisian crochet hooks and regular crochet hooks? It's not necessarily what's different about them. What's different is how big of a project do you want to make with Tunisian crochet? I hope that makes sense. Because like I said, if you're going to do something tiny, you don't need anything but a regular crochet hook. It's about how many stitches and how wide your fabric is that will determine what kind of hook you need for doing Tunisian crochet. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, I think there were other questions that came in. If anybody wants to repeat any questions that I missed, please feel welcome. Have I done a tutorial on Tunisian crochet in the round? I feel like I have. If I haven't, yeah, sure. I'm drinking lemongrass green tea with a slice of lemon in it this morning, and it tastes like heaven. Lemongrass is one of my favorite scents and flavors. There's something so, I don't know. It makes me happy. Hi, Marie. Yeah, lemongrass is one of my favorites, scent-wise and taste-wise. We have someone new here, Dean. Hi, Dean. Okay, so if I don't see any more questions, I will get started on the knit swatch for the 3-ply of yarn. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to do a quick tutorial on chain plying. So we start with a slip knot, like that, and then we pull our working yarn, not our tail, through it, and then tighten up the slip knot, and then we take this loop and pull a loop through, and then we take this loop and pull a loop through. And so as we continue to work now, we will now have 3 loops. Oh, I did say hi to Dean. Dean's 8 years old. That's wonderful, and you just learned how to crochet. I'm so happy about that. What do you like to make so far, Dean? Okay, so now we have our 3 plies. So now we'll cast on with a slip knot onto our needle. And with chain plying, I find it is easier for me to do a knit cast on so that I don't have to have a long tail with my 3-ply chain ply yarn. So I'm going to knit into it. What did Dean say? What's he making? Oh, I'm not seeing his messages. I'd like to know, Dean, I'd like to know what you've made so far and what you would like to learn how to make. So we're going to do some knit cast on stitches here. I'm going to try to get to like 10 or 12 here. Ah, he made a lovey for his brother, and his goal is a blanket. Thank you, Janet. That's awesome. Yes, you need to make a blanket. One of the first things that I made were baby blankets for my son when I was pregnant with him. I had so much fun making baby blankets. when I was pregnant. That was awesome. Yeah, blankets are a super fun project. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, do 12. And welcome to the podcasting. We are happy to have you here. And if you ever have any questions, please let me know. Be happy to help you if I can. Okay, let's count. I think I've got 12 now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so now we've got our 12 stitches cast on, and you see our loop is getting short here. No worries. At this point, you want to make sure that you pay attention and don't let it go too short. Like if this loop was up here, it gets a little harder to keep going with the loop. So try to pay attention and make sure you catch it at 3 or 4 inches. And you simply just insert your fingers into the loop and pull down another loop. You can make them as long as you want. I try to just go, you notice I just went down to my arm's length and then just keep going. And then once I use up this yarn, I'll do it again. So I'm going to start with a knit 1, purl 1 row. And what I'm going back and forth on is whether or not I should do knit 1, purl 1 rows for 1 by 1 rib, or if I should do knit 1, purl 1 for seed stitch for this project. So if you do knit 1, purl 1 for rib, after you do your first row of knit 1, purl 1, you would then on every following row knit the stitches as they're presented to you. So when it looks like a knit stitch, you knit it. When it looks like a purl stitch, you purl it. Or if I'm going to do seed stitch, then I would do the opposite. So there's my first row of knit 1, purl 1. And you can see I still have plenty of loop here, so I'm going to keep going. No, stockinette stitch is knit across one row and then purl across the following row. So the difference between in the finished fabric, what I like about both seed stitch and 1 by 1 ribbing is that they're both reversible. Now the only difference is, or one of the differences, that 1 by 1 rib knitting is going to be lofty, but it's also going to shrink your fabric. And when making an Afghan, you want more bang for your buck, not less, right? So I was thinking doing seed stitch will actually flatten it out a little bit so that it doesn't shrink up on itself, which will give me a bigger fabric for the amount of work I'm putting into it. So not that I'm being lazy, but I'm just thinking about the texture and how much loft I really need. It's already a 3-ply project, so it's already a super chunky weight project. Do I really need the extra bulk of loft of knit 1, purl 1 ribbing? Probably not. I could probably get by with something that sits a little flatter like seed stitch. They're both beautiful and they're both very simple textures, which when you go with a thicker weight yarn, I think simple textures are really elegant. So I'm going to try seed stitch for a couple of rows here, and I really just want to work a couple more rows so that I can show you how I'm going to keep moving my chain ply as I go. So I'm still doing knit 1, purl 1 rows, but I'm knitting the purl stitches and purling the knit stitches. So I'm doing it just the opposite of what I would do for ribbing. These are both non-curling fabrics and reversible fabrics, so they're both fantastic candidates for scarves or Mobius or all sorts of things where you would want to see both sides. Okay, we finished the second row, and as you can see here, we've got a decent amount of loop here, but because we're at the end of the row, it's really a great time to just get it done. So what I'll do is insert my fingers into the loop, pull the working yarn through and elongate it to my arm's width and start my next row. Okay, and for seed stitch, I want to see how my stitches are presented to me, and it starts with a purl, so I'm going to knit it. After a couple of rows, you'll have this memorized, but in the beginning you just want to pay attention. And actually, if you ever get lost in seed stitch too also, or in ribbing, it's just a good idea to say, hey, what is that stitch facing me? Is it a knit or a purl? Because whether it is determines what stitch comes next. If I can get a couple of rows done here, I'll be able to show you this texture, and you can get an idea of how pretty this is going to look and how warm and cozy. 3-ply DK weight yarn gives you a super chunky finish. That why the loops on the hanging thread? Why the loops on Marie? Oh, maybe you didn't catch that we're doing chain plying this morning. We're doing chain plying, which is a really cool technique for using 3 plies of yarn without having to have 3 balls of yarn sitting in front of you. So if you want to triple a yarn, if you have 3 balls and you want to pull a strand from all 3 balls, you can absolutely do it that way. Now, one of the drawbacks to doing that is that your balls can get tangled as they're sitting on the floor, and the yarns can get tangled. Not that it's not okay, you can still do it that way, it's no problem. But if you wanted to do that technique with 1 ball of yarn, you can do it with chain plying. So if you would like to see a full tutorial on chain plying, I do have one on my YouTube channel already. I've done it several times in different projects and in different videos, but I do have a standalone chain plying tutorial video that also shows you how to get started on knitting or crochet with it. Pretty sure. Hopefully I'm not lying. Not that I'm lying. Maybe I'm exaggerating. I don't know. I think in the video I show you how to get started knitting and crocheting. I can't remember. It's been a while since I made it. Yes, chain plying, Marie. Yeah, and anytime I show you a new technique, it's not necessarily to say, oh, you shouldn't do the old way, you should just do the new way now. I hope I've never given you that impression. When I show you a new technique, it's to add a new skill set in your toolbox. That's it. Because the more tools you have in your toolbox, the more choices you have when coming to future projects. And so don't ever think that because I'm showing you chain plying doesn't mean you can't pull 3 strands of separate balls of yarn. You can still do that too. And there's lots of reasons why that's preferred over chain plying, like if you want to change color and do gradient, or you want to mix and match colors together and do marbling. There's so many reasons to have both tools in your toolbox. Always remember that there's nothing wrong with having multiple ways of doing the same thing. That's what gives you choices and lets you decide which option is better for any given project. I mean, that's life, right? The more ways we know how to do something, the more likely we are to have success. What do you do if you get row gauge but the height of the stitches is off? Judy, that's a great question, and that depends on how important it is, right? So when you are, if your gauge swatch is, okay, so we do gauge swatch for a number of reasons. The most important reason is to get garments to fit, right? If your garment is worked top down, that row gauge is really important to make sure that you're going to get the right bust measurement, the right arm circumference measurement. But if it's top down and you're not getting the row gauge right, you're working top down, you can check your gauge as you go based on your blocked gauge swatch measurement and end up stopping at a longer or shorter length depending on what that gauge is. So when there are times when you can let that go, and then there are times when maybe it's more important to have row gauge over, stitch gauge. I think I said that all incorrectly. So what I meant to say is your stitch gauge is important. If you're doing top down, how wide your gauge is super important, right? So then you want your stitch gauge to be accurate, and your row gauge wouldn't be as important if you're doing something top down because you can adjust the length of it as you go. If you are doing a side to side garment, again, the row gauge is more important for getting the width right, and then you could adjust how wide your stitch gauge is for how long you wanted your piece to be. So if you're not getting the right stitch and row gauge, it depends on what you're using it for to determine which one is more important. Because if you're getting it right on one and wrong on the other, switching your hook isn't going to make a difference. So then you have to ask yourself, which one is more important to this project and which one is easier to manipulate? Meaning which one is easier to adjust in my project. So again, if you're doing something top down, it would be easier to keep your stitch gauge accurate and work on customizing your row gauge. And if you're working something sideways, it would be more important to have your row gauge accurate and your stitch gauge would be something you could manipulate. And then in things that aren't wearables, it's really not that important at all, right? If something is a little longer or a little shorter, a little wider or a little narrower for a scarf, not so important. Oh, also for a hat, this would be important too. If you're doing a hat in the round, it would be more important to have your stitch gauge correct than your row gauge because you could adjust the height of the hat still by how many rows you decide to do. Let's see if I explained that correctly, because it was a great question and I just hope that my answer did it justice. 'Cause, I mean, talking live, I don't really get my thoughts collected as well as if I were writing it down for a tutorial, but hopefully I gave enough examples to make that make sense. If not, please ask me more about it because that's a really important question. I get this question all the time. My gauge was right for one and wrong for the other. Oh, good. I'm glad. It's about giving multiple examples that I really think helps drive an explanation home. I want another cup of tea when this is done. This is so good. You're welcome, Joe. You're welcome, everybody. I am so happy to help. Aren't you too? If you have knowledge and someone else asks you a question, aren't you just thrilled to be able to share what you know? I know I am. It makes me so happy to be able to share stuff that I've learned along the way. Just anything I can do to make someone else's journey simpler than mine is always a pleasant experience to me. Does anybody have any more questions? Those are some great questions today, everybody. Thank you so much. I mean, I know I say it all the time, but thank you, YouTube. This live stream experience is so awesome. The fact that we can have conversations together. I know I'm the only voice that we hear, but I mean, I just love this community so much, and I love to be able to talk and share together. It's so wonderful. Such a great learning tool too, and teaching tool. I love to be able to do tutorials here live. They're different than my other tutorials because I can get that live feedback from you and answer specific questions. So fun. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend a few minutes here with me. I hope you enjoyed all the tutorials and all the questions and answers, chatting with me and everyone else. Let us make time to create, share, and inspire today and every day. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. I forgot the sneak peek. I'll bring it tomorrow, I promise. I've got a sneak peek tease to show you tomorrow, and you're going to love it.